Hi, Nicole. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shane. Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. It's one of the late days today, so it's 2
Yeah.
a.m. here in
Oh,
Japan.
God.
A little bit late, uh, but exciting times. We're very close to the end of the year, and hopefully very soon we'll be able to have our vacation. Actually, I'm planning to make the project slow down, so our last full day of activity will be the 18th, so
Ah,
Friday. And our next full day of activity will be the 4th of January, so 2 weeks.
that's
Of course,
cool.
yeah, if people need something urgently, of course, they can get it. But yeah, we'll be slowing down. Oh, hi, Stuart.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Well done. Congratulations.
Lots of interesting stuff here with ISO, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for them to put the downloadable, purchasable version on their website before we go crazy with all of our press releases.
Got it.
I must say there was a lot of work in preparing our press releases because we've got so many and so many languages. So there's various options when you're doing press releases, of course, and frequently people pay a marketing agency to attempt to place interviews and so on. But in our case, have journalists nearby who can easily pay attention. So the question wasn't how do we pay a marketing agency? The question was how do we get maximum distribution? Hey, Andrew. David just
Hi,
joined
Shane.
too.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, hello.
Hey, hi Andrew. Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise.
So, well, you know what? Let's get cracking with the antitrust policy notice. As usual, if you've got any questions, you can check out the full policy at the website, and we have our counsel available to go over it if necessary. So this is the last global webinar of the year. We're going to be picking up again in January. This is therefore the last opportunity for us to dig into what's happening with ISO and what that means and so on and so forth. So I want to take it in a couple of directions. First of all, to show you precisely exactly where we are right now. And as part of that endeavor, I shall share my screen. So as you can see, this is the beautiful back end of EIN Press Newswire. And where we're at is that we have loads of press releases in lots of languages ready to go. The two biggest ones are Toyota announcing that they're the first entity conformant with the ISO standard. And of course, adjacent to that is the announcement of the ISO standard. And we have other stuff coming later in the week. He says scrolling quickly so people get a tantalizing hint. And that's ready to go. What we're waiting on here is for our dear friends at ISO to move from 6.0 to 6060, which is scheduled in the database for the 14th. So it could happen anytime today. We don't know when, which means that our press releases are tentatively queued for tomorrow morning time. So the main ISO release is queued for going out around 10 a.m. Japan time, and same for the Toyota release. If something changes more quickly on the ISO side, we might go earlier, so we have the US daytime. But long story short, with a very tons of PR lined up, and in addition to ISO and Toyota, we've got a bunch of other conformance announcements coming. We've got new partners. We've got announcements about platinum members, and all of that's happening before the 18th. But that's not all. We have more people join. Hello. Mary's there. So while there's all the press releases and so on, as soon as ISO actually makes us downloadable on their website, naturally our own website has been getting a significant overhaul. One of the most important facts, which is worth reiterating, is that while you can pay ISO for the standard, you can just download it from our website as well. You can review the standard, and you can get it for free forever. The only difference between our ISO version and the version you get off our website is that their one says ISO, and our one says OpenChain 2.1. Zooming back to the website briefly.
Hey,
So
Shane, quick question on that one.
Yeah.
Will that pose an issue for ISO? You know, if we have it available for free here, I mean, I don't know if there's sort of a competition issue, you know, if they might disfavor us just generally making it available.
So there is precedent for this with actually OpenXML from Microsoft, where ECMA revision 4 of their standard is functionally identical to the ISO version. So technically what we're doing is not the ISO version, but one that is functionally identical to OpenChain 2 and ISO.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And our one is built directly off the Joint Development Foundation copyrighted version, which is the version that was subsequently given to ISO and reformatted with their copyrights and trademarks and whatnot. So
Okay.
I've had no indication of any issue with this. And if anything was raised, of course, we would address it. But like I said, it's there for OpenXML. It has been for many years with ECMA. In fact, let me take a moment to show everyone that, because it's very interesting how these things happened over the years. Yes, here we go. So you might remember that it was quite contentious back in the day when Microsoft was actually standardizing OpenXML. And there were quite a few variants, actually, due to the amount of information and people asking what to do with it. Anyway, here we are. ECMA 376 4th edition is aligned with ISO 2950. So that particular edition is the one that went into ISO and graduated there. And the difference between the 376 4th edition and the ISO version is that the ISO one is 120 Swiss francs and the ECMA one is free. But of course, for entities that want to put on file the ISO standard, I mean, 120 francs doesn't break the bank by any measure. Yeah, so that's looking good. But we do want ISO to hit publish on this before we go crazy with all of our press releases. And meanwhile, while we're waiting for them to do that.
Hey, Shane, sorry, one more question on this particular page right here.
Yeah.
Under lifecycle, it says a standard is reviewed every 5 years. I assume that's in reference to their review, ISO's review. We could, if we wanted to iterate more frequently than 5 years, how would that work?
We simply submit it again with a revision. And technically our one this year is 5230:2020. And we can submit an updated revision at any time, and it would just get an iteration on the year. The standard review every 5 years on their part is to make sure that dead standards don't clutter the system. So yeah, we can submit an update sooner if we so wish. The full methodology is that Joint Development Foundation has set up an entity called Joint Development Foundation International, which has a committee on OpenChain. And that particular committee would submit the update. But for the project, it's completely transparent. We do exactly as we have before.
Great, thanks.
The only thing I'd note is that we don't want to iterate too quickly, or we will probably irritate ISO and also our stakeholders.
For sure, thanks.
Absolutely.
Shane, I have a couple of questions as well. First
Yes,
of all, will we have access to the ISO standard once it's released or not?
You will have access to the ISO version, which has got the ISO boilerplate and copyright via the ISO system. And that will be a download.
Okay, so
Will cost you about 120 Swiss francs.
Yeah,
but on our
okay.
web, you can also obtain the functionally identical OpenChain 2.1 with no charge.
Yeah.
And when it comes to
Okay.
the actual document, in terms of the requirements and so on, it's functionally identical. There's no difference at all.
Okay. My second question, are we considered the body that owns this particular document?
No. This document is owned by Joint Development Foundation, and they've given it to a subsidiary called Joint Development Foundation International. They are our past submitter. So in essence, we gave them the copyright, and then they gave a copyright grant to ISO, and that happens in that sequence. In practice, Development Foundation has a committee for us, and that's our steering committee. So, it's our standard. It's just that it's required for ISO to be granted copyright on the standard. And as part of the process before that, for due diligence, it was needed for the path submitter to have the copyright as well. So the path is very clear.
Okay. So we don't expect anybody else to be messing with this other than us. Is that right?
That's right. Technically, the update to the standard will happen through Joint Development Foundation. And Joint Development Foundation's OpenChain committee is our steering committee. No one else is empowered to iterate or change the standard outside of our processes. But, and I think I should emphasize this because it might be useful. I'm just going to share my screen again. And apologies if all of this sharing gets a bit blurry, but there is method to my madness. So when it comes to the OpenChain project itself, on GitHub, we have a specification repository, and we collect all of the information given to us, suggestions, concerns, improvements, anything that's formally codified into something that people want addressed, we put into these issues. We put them in various mechanisms. This call, the global work team call, is one mechanism. Another is to send in information to our specification mailing list. Any party at any time can do so and can edit the standard, but the channel to edit the standard is through the project. And then the project essentially convenes our steering committee and codifies iterations or updates. So, I mean, in this sense, nothing has changed for our community. We do have an ISO number, but we maintain the standard. We are the ones that will iterate it. It's freely available on our site. We still have self-certification and so on and so forth. But we do have the additional gravitas of the ISO number, which is great. This methodology for standards is pretty normal. Sorry, did we have another question or comment?
I have another related question subject with regards to the OpenChain 2.1 and then the ISO standard. So I understand they're functionally identical. However, so between 2.0 and 2.1, so the only difference is just some wording additions. Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to make sure.
The only difference is formatting, actually. OpenChain 2.0 was formatted by the community prior to our ISO submission. And when it came to our ISO submission, we had to reformat to fit into their particular setup. Part of that reformat was very simple, such as removing capitalization in some areas, and other parts were a little bit more in depth. At one or two points, I believe we clarified language, but with no change to the intent of the item being clarified. So OpenChain 2.1 is really just 2.0 reformatted for ISO. And ISO's publication is identical to us in the context of the terms and then the questions and requirements. The only differences are that they have their ISO boilerplate and so on at the beginning. And apart from that, 2.1 and ISO 5230 are identical.
Okay, great. Thanks for.
So, I mean,
thanks.
You're super welcome. I mean, technically, everyone who's OpenChain 2 conformant is ISO conformant. They just have to announce it. So we have a pipeline of companies announcing their conformance with the ISO standard. And any parties who are 2.0 conformant and want to announce that are super welcome to do so. They can do it independently, or they can contact me and be part of the stream of announcements from the project. One thing that's probably very important to say is that we've been positioning the project to be able to support conformance to either OpenChain 2.1 or the ISO standard as effectively as possible. So from making the website easier to land on and get information from, through to working on new internationalization has been a real goal of the last couple of weeks. As we kick off, we make very clear that we're identical to OpenChain 2.0 and ISO 5230. And we provide ways for people to adopt the standard. Just rolling through to the adoption. The primary thing for us is self-certification. It always has been, it always will be, but of course we do have independent assessment and third-party certification available from partners. We have created hour-long explanations of each approach, explaining how they're done, what type of companies do it, and so on and so forth. And we have backup reference material to assist with this. I'm going to focus a little bit on the web app because we have some announcements coming out very soon after this call about it. But before I do that, I'm just going to drop in at the partner page. So the partners are able to help with all kinds of things. You can see their physical locations on this map, but they provide global coverage. We have a lot of multinationals. So we've got a bunch of law firms, we've got service providers, we've got vendors and third-party certifiers. And they help people with independent assessment or third-party certification. Now, I zoomed through that quickly because I want to actually look at self-certification and talk to you about how we're going to make that easier for everyone. So if people go to the self-certification, they immediately know that they can self-certify to the ISO standard or equivalent. And we've added the ability not only to change versions if they have to go back in time because of something to do with their supply chain, but we've added the ability to change language. So you can work on this questionnaire in English, and right now you can also do it in German, Japanese, Korean, simplified Chinese, and traditional Chinese. And we've got more languages coming online later this week. So we've been working hard to make sure that conformance to the international standard, a lot of our material, our website is positioned today in English. Our self-certification is in multiple languages, and the specification itself will be available in multiple languages, hopefully by the end of this week. The additions to this list you can expect include French, Italian, Spanish. We've also got Hebrew and Hindi coming for the self-certification web app. For the specification, all of the above except, I believe, Hebrew, Hindi, and yeah, that's right. The specification translation is a little bit expensive into Hebrew or Hindi, so we deferred on that for now until we assess demand. But yeah, I mean, if you have customers that want to self-certify, if you are a company that wants to self-certify, you can sure do that in all of these languages. And that's, example of how we're trying to make the project more and more useful. We're also trying to make sure that people meet the community head on. There's going to be a notice coming on this in a few hours, basically saying until the 4th of January, we're on vacation. But we're going to continue the bi-weekly webinars, these global work team calls, and guide people to all of our lists. We're very determined as well to make sure that people can engage with us in terms of our previous webinars, which are cited on this page, and also things like our community interviews. So our community interviews, a whole range of people from around OpenChain kindly took the time to tell their story and talk about how they think this community should be built out. And for our webinars, well, you know the webinars, 15 this year, not a bad run, all of them available here, and we'll pick up again on the first week of January to start recording new ones. So yeah, that's roughly where we're at. As soon as ISO hits that publish button, which is scheduled for today on their database, we start publishing our press releases about ISO. And the first company that got queued up for announcement, that's Toyota. The press releases will be going out. Let's have a look here. English, traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, German, and Japanese and Korean for the two major series of announcements. You can see that we'll be going out quite broadly, particularly when we come to, let's say, the English version. So the English version of the press release will be going out to Australia, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Ireland, Israel, Norway, Russia, Sweden, Switzerland, United States, Vietnam. So you can see that we're going to be doing a lot of outreach. Each one is targeted to its individual market. So for instance, Chinese Simplified is going to China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. But no matter where your friends and customers and your competitors are, they'll be hearing about this. As I said, we also have a series of other announcements about conformance partners and new board members coming throughout the week. So lots going on. The improved website, we've been working with the community on that, and I think it's got a lot better. These services like the self-certification in multiple languages, I hope will assist during this transition point. And the thing I would really value from you as a community is to maybe take a moment to go to the new website and see if the story it's telling is adequate for your needs and understanding, or we need to make additional improvements. The next couple of days will be pretty critical for the project as we get that pre-Christmas bump of attention. Now, when we come out in the new year, we do have other announcements to make, so we'll be getting pretty lively in January. But what we do this week is exceptionally important. I wanted to pause there and see if there's any questions.
It's fantastic news, Shane. Well done, you and everyone else involved. It's brilliant.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess the last thing I'll show people, and a lot of you know this already, but OpenChain is managing the background through our online repositories. So all of our reference material, it's about 1,000 documents now, is available up here. And some of it is very new. Like 2 hours ago, I added the self-certification questionnaire for OpenChain 2.1. That also went to our lists asking for feedback. But in a nutshell, it's a kind of a prettier version of the web app for people who want checklists as they do self-certification with printouts or whatever, and the source available. And throughout our repositories, we have information like that. And indeed, our self-certification web app itself is open source and available. Everything we do is right out there. So apart from the spec itself, everything is under CC0 or Apache license. And from the reference material through to the web app, through to our country teams, through to going and actually looking at all the versions of the specification ever made, it's right there. And we're making it as easy to access as much of it as possible on the website. But do you have any questions or comments in addition to this? Or do we roll off into the sunset and just keep hitting refresh on ISO until they publish us finally? Okay, if there's no questions, we're going to wrap up the global call. There's the ISO address if you want to keep refreshing it. But I warn you, they don't always follow their own deadlines with great accuracy. So it's entirely possible they will leave us refreshing for another 20 hours. We experienced that with the 6-week publication of the standard in September 23rd. Okay, but that's where it is for there. If you want to check out the self-certification questionnaire and you want to play around with the different languages, here you go. And as I said, we've got right now English, German, Japanese, Korean, simplified, and traditional Chinese. We've got a bunch more languages coming at the end of the week. If you have a little bit of time and can take a quick look at the main website, especially with the eyes of someone who might be new to this, much appreciated. And beyond that, 18th, we begin to go into a silent mode for Christmas. Main services will be available if people need help or assistance, but we will be pausing our meetings and calls and so on so that we can all take a little break, coming back 2 weeks later. So if I don't see you on the North America call in a few hours, I wish you a wonderful holiday season. Stay safe, stay well, and talk to at least some of you in a few hours as we kick off North America, and all of my friends in Europe. Those of you in Germany, enjoy your new lockdowns. Be careful. Those of you not in Germany, pretend you're in lockdown. Be careful. It'll work out better. And I'll see you in about 2 weeks.
Thanks, Shane. This was great.
Thank you very
Shane.
much.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Shane. Appreciate all the help. Just one quick thing. You're going to start blog the next thing to get put together for.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Can you repeat the question?
This is the blog that you were talking about.
A blog.
Yeah.
On which part?
This is for the conference that we did last week.
That's right.
For our organization, we went through
You did the certification. Okay. Yeah. There you go, everyone. Cisco's coming to announce later this week. The news is out.
Perfect.
Thursday,
Great.
it will be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prasad. Have a lovely day. Talk to you all
Happy
soon.
holidays, everyone. Thank you.